back to Salmon's Pizzeria for another episode of the Championship Penitentiary. I don't have a game to talk about personally because Rafe weren't playing, so I'm in a much happier mood than usual. However, someone who's also in a pretty good mood is Enzo. How are you, Enzo?
Yes, I'm doing very well. Unlike you, I'm actually enjoying watching my team play these days, which is a really nice feeling. Something that I had kind of forgotten. I'd forgotten what it was like, to be honest with you, because the last few years haven't necessarily been the most fun to be a Queens Park fan with a combination of things on and off the park. But fortunately, at least right now, anyway, on the park, we are pretty enjoyable to watch, and the results are proven that as well. So quite a lot to talk about since we've actually played two games in the past 5 days. So yeah, lots to cover.
Yeah, we do have plenty to cover, especially since the last episode recording. So we're going to start off with a quick run through of the midweek games from last week, which saw our Broth in third take on air in fourth. Well, we're fourth going into the game. That game finished 1-all. Meanwhile, Dunfermline managed to beat Ross County 3-0 to see them jump up into fourth. Actually, no, they would have been fourth beforehand. I'm just realised about goal difference. But, it's like 2 points clear in fourth and pushing further down into fifth. And it really does just strengthen Arbroath's position in that playoff spot. Meanwhile, the Vermin continuing their good run of form, which they continue to do at the weekend, which we'll get onto later. County once again proving to be the worst team away from home in the league when Rafe exists. But we will move. So that was the midweek games. We'll just go into the Saturday fixtures, we'll start off with Queens Park at home to Airdrie. Queens Park were coming off a narrow defeat to Dunfermline the previous Saturday, whilst Airdrie managed to defeat nine-man Morton. Enzo, you're at this game, so I'll let you take us away.
I was indeed, yeah, and I have to say, I was quite nervous going into this game because I mean it's one thing playing against a team above you, but when you're playing against a team that's below you and they've got the opportunity to potentially close the gap a little bit, I was really, really quite worried. And I feel I just had a bad feeling. You know, Airdrie have played some decent football in recent weeks, potentially even months, but the results probably haven't been there. And I just had this horrible feeling that it was a good opportunity for everything to click and for them to come to Leicester and beat us 2 or 3 nil. Fortunately, it wasn't the case. Although I mean, they might have taken an early lead. They had a really good opportunity quite early on when they managed to cut us apart a little bit. And Ewan Henderson, who, to be fair, I mean, he's doing really well for Airdrie this season. They're a bit maybe a bit too heavily reliant on his goals at times. And I wasn't a huge fan of Ewan Henderson when he played for us. However, he broke through, kind of cutting into the box on the left hand side. Took a shot, and maybe I don't want to say it was too easy for Cal Ferry because he did make a good save, but I do kind of think that if he'd lifted it a little bit, the outcome could have potentially been different. Fortunately, that wasn't the case. And then around half an hour, in fact, I think it was the half an hour mark exactly, Henry Fieldson cuts the ball back, kind of just inside the box near the byline, and Michael Ruth, who only came back from a really long. I mean, he missed. He got injured. I think it was 2 games into the season, and he only kind of started coming back in and around the squad mid-February. That was actually his first start, so it was brilliant to see him in his first start get the goal that ultimately won us the 3 points. And it was a really solid finish, just right place at right time. Right time. Michael Ruth, I thought, was really, really solid. A really kind of physical forward who put a lot of pressure on the Airdrie defence. And then it was the most insane thing in the world. We just chose to sit back and soak up as much pressure as possible. And I feel as though Sean Crichton was confident that we were going to do it. He felt like we had enough about us to make sure that Airdrie then didn't get back into the game. And obviously it worked in the end. It didn't necessarily make for the best spectacle, or I mean, it was quite nerve wracking for Queens Park fans in the ground. Airdrie did hit the bar just after half time, but fortunately, other than that, they didn't create too much. Too much. I think from an Airdrie perspective, there was a real lack of desire. I felt, which is really surprising because it was such a huge, vital fixture for them. I mean, for both teams, obviously. Dom Thomas, I thought, was really, really poor. He was dispossessed quite easily, actually, in the lead up to our goal, which I'm sure will be really, really disappointing. I know that Tom obviously scored two fantastic goals for them last week against Morton when they got that win against nine-man Greenock Morton, so it's probably a bit difficult to take too much from that game. But we hung on. We hung on. Airdrie had a bit of the ball, but they really just didn't do anything to break us down. I can't recall Cal Ferry having to make many, if any, saves, and we got the 3 points, which put a little bit of breathing space between us and Airdrie. A huge, huge victory within the wider context of that relegation battle. And I have to say, listen, there are still what 9, 8, 9, 10 games left for some teams at this stage. I'm not sure I see a way back for Airdrie at this point. I really don't. They're not. They just I think they have a bit of a ragtag squad that's just been bundled together, and I don't think there's a whole lot of cohesion there. And I know that Aaron Taylor Sinclair did well when he first came in, but every time I watch his interviews, I just think this guy doesn't like. How is this guy going to get a team that's struggling up for it? I can't see any real. And I don't want to accuse him of not being enthusiastic because I'm sure he is, but he just doesn't have that level of energy that you want from your manager. I think. Whereas on the flip side, Sean Crichton is exactly the kind of guy that would have players wanting to run through brick walls for him, and we are seeing that right now in the performances. In fact, even when we've been struggling this season, we've been seeing it because it's never been for a lack of effort. But yes, massive, massive win, so important, especially after we had that disappointing performance through East End Park the week previous. So to bounce back with such a vital 3 points just really is very, very significant. It says a lot about the mentality of this team.
Yeah, it is a case of you were saying about sitting back and hoping Edry don't get back into the game. They are the lowest goal scorers in the league,
Yeah,
so you can definitely see the thinking behind that, and evidently it has worked.
yeah.
As you were saying about Edry probably finishing bottom, it's like me last week with their win against Bolton, myself and Kieran were saying about how it looked as slow as if it was one of those results that peepers over the cracks
I think
because
so. Yeah,
it wasn't. It's like even with Morton being down to 10 men for an hour and then 9 men for like the last 10 minutes, Morton could have won that game.
they
Even
still had opportunities. They certainly had plenty of the ball. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I
like
totally
Morton
agree.
had plenty of chances in that game. But it was a case of individual in an individual context. It was a good result, but it was a case of that doesn't look like it's going to be sustainable. And like you say, we've been saying all season about how it's like they played football, but they just don't get the results, and that's just what's going to stop them from really getting any higher than ninth. Like they are 4 points from real safety. It's like they're 3 points behind. No, they're a point behind County now, but we'll get into their result in a minute. Um, but yeah, it's not looking just not looking good
I
for
just
Edry, is it?
I can't see it, and I hope this doesn't. I mean, obviously, with me supporting a club that are kind of down. I mean, obviously, the league table is so tight that anyone from probably fourth or fifth down could potentially still find themselves in that situation. As unlikely as it might be for maybe one or two clubs, but all this doesn't bite me in the arse. Come back to bite me in the arse when I say this, but I don't see a way back for them, and I think the best they can realistically achieve now is ninth. I just don't think they don't have the momentum. They don't have the experience. And when I say experience, I'm referring both to the squad and to the manager. And I just don't think they've got that kind of dig that you really need to achieve things at this level.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it just doesn't look good for them.
Doesn't
It's
look good for
not really
them.
much more that can be said. They probably have the worst squad as well. Inexperienced manager, who, to be fair, considering where they were when he took over, it's definitely a vast improvement. But
Definitely.
it's just
But they don't win games.
inevitable. There's an
Just
inevitability about it.
I think so. And I think when you read comments from Airdrie fans online, I feel as though their mindset is quite similar, especially after that defeat. I think the game on Saturday for them, less than a must win, it was certainly a must not lose, and they did still lose it.
Because, as I said, they're 4 points off of eighth now, so it is just you can't just get a win and that's enough to claw you back like on level points or whatever, and then it's like all you could possibly need is a draw. But now it's a case of no, you need to get at least
Yeah.
a win, and
And you know
coming.
what though, they, and I know we'll come on to talk about the upcoming fixtures, but they actually have the perfect game for that this weekend because their record against Arbroath is very, very good, and it seems to be that for one reason or another, the way they play football, just kind of like Arbroath's kryptonite, it counteracts their whole game plan quite successfully, and they've had decent results against them this year. So I actually wouldn't be too surprised if they did get a result against Arbroath. And it would be a good time for it, especially with Arbroath faltering ever so slightly. I think it's fair to say they're not on the form that they once were this season. So I guess that's just the nature of this division. Things can change so quickly. So maybe if Airdrie get a result, then I'll be sitting here next week going, actually, do you know what? I think they're going to be fine, depending on how the other results go.
To be fair, I think this has been the case with just about every team this season, where it's like
Yeah.
it's just constant flip flopping because this division makes no sense.
Yeah.
But I don't really think there's anything else to talk about with those two. So, I mean, we'll talk about Queen's Park later because
Of course.
But of course, that moves us on to the second Saturday fixture, which was Morton against St Johnstone. As mentioned, Morton, they came off a defeat against Airdrie, which saw them reduced to 9 men. And meanwhile, Saints, they managed to defeat Ayr 3-1 and are looking to open a larger gap over Partick Thistle. First half saw St Johnstone dominant, but also not at the same time. Like, they had all of the ball, they were pretty much camped in the Morton half, but nothing really substantial came of it. And it looked very much the same for the second half. But it was just broken. It took until the 78th minute when Rhys McAleer from 25 yards, his free kick would find the bottom corner to break the deadlock. And then 10 minutes later, Diabate would just charge through the midfield, play a through ball to Liam Smith, who hits it first time into the bottom corner, making it 2-0 to St Johnstone. And that was how that game would finish. That was really the only two highlights of this game.
Yeah.
But yeah, with that result, Saints are now 8 points clear of Thistle, who do still have a game in hand because of cup action, which we'll talk about a little bit. Does seem like, whilst yes, there is still, as mentioned, Thistle have the game in hand, and in a couple of weeks, actually, the two sides play against each other.
Yep.
It might be a bit too much for Thistle to claw it back now.
I mean, if they win their game in hand and then beat St Johnstone, not necessarily. I mean, if you're a Thistle fan, and I think the one thing that they're going to look back on this season is how much their away form has killed them. But given that game is, I believe it's at Firhill, isn't it? The St Johnstone Thistle game in a couple of weeks.
It's at Firhill.
So they'll go into that with a bit of confidence, definitely. But for me, I think you have to realistically make Saints favourites for the title. I think most Thistle fans would probably agree with that. And do you know what? They might even feel more comfortable going into this run-in with that expectation, not necessarily on them, but on St Johnstone. Morton, on the other hand, that's 2 games in a row where they might feel a little bit hard done by to an extent for different reasons. The game against St Johnstone, I mean, I don't think it did look like a lack of effort, but they played that entire game without any real strikers. So you can't really be expected to find the back of the net without any real goal scorers on the park. And I'm seeing, it's interesting actually. You'll remember better than I do, but Ian Murray he has his favourites and he plays them, and he seems quite reluctant to change things about even when things aren't necessarily going well, and that also seems to be the case now at Morton. And honestly, from what I saw, obviously I wasn't at the game, I didn't see the full game, I only saw relatively condensed highlights. I actually don't think Morton played that badly. Ultimately, they were just beaten by a better team who were still able to score goals despite being down to 10 men, because they are potentially going to win the division, and Morton are more than likely going to find themselves in trouble at the opposite end of the table and looking behind their shoulders. It wasn't that long ago though that they were, they thought they had a real chance at fourth. And granted, they do. All it takes is a a run of a couple of games. Not sure I see that from them though with the squad that they've got and with there do seems to be some frustrations about Ian Murray cropping up.
It was definitely a case of that because, like I said, I think there was only it was maybe only 2 or 3 clips in the highlights package of Morton attacking, and it's a case of St Johnstone, they're top of the league for the reason they've got the best squad. They just simply have a better team than Morton, and obviously it doesn't help when, like you say about not having strikers. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if even Brophy was on the pitch or not, but Curtis Main, he's obviously been sent off away at Airdrie, which is not helping the case. But thanks to other results, Morton are sitting 3 points above that relegation playoff spot. They are the team in 8th. They have a -10 goal difference.
I think I think Brophy is out for, I don't know if it's the remainder of the season, but he's not been in the squad for like the past 3 games. So I don't know what the longer term outlook is for him. But no, he's not been. He wasn't involved against us. Wasn't involved against Airdrie, and wasn't involved again against St Johnstone, which will be a real frustration for. Morton, because obviously the game before that against Dunfermline, I think he did he. I can't. I'm seeming to recall he got at least about an hour on the park anyway. So that's going to be problematic for them, especially because the window's shut, so they can't go out and even take a punt on some random young boy like they might have done if this had happened 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, but back to your point about St Johnstone. With their upcoming game against Thistle, it is an interesting one because with it being at Firhill, because Thistle, they're unbeaten at home this season. They're the only team unbeaten at home. They've from their 14 games, they've earned 34 points. But then, as you mentioned, when it comes to away form, Thistle have only earned 15 points. I think Kieran's mentioned this before about them being winless since
September. It was September. It was they beat us 1-0 at Leicester
late September, and they've only won 3 away games. But meanwhile, St Johnstone, of their 14 away games, have won 8 of them. They've got the best away record in the league by a country mile. They've earned 28 points away from home. Ayr have the second best away form, 19
really?
points.
That surprises me, given they've only won 7 games in total. I guess they've drawn so many, though, that's going to eventually add up.
Yeah, Ayr have won 4 and drawn 7 away from home.
There we go, yeah. There we go.
Meanwhile, they've won 3 and drawn 6 at home. They're right down the bottom when it comes to home form. But it will be interesting to see how that one goes. That's really... The thing is, though, it's like Thistle's game in hand is away at Starks Park, and we all know what their record is like at Starks Park. I think, what is it, not won there since 2010?
That's wild. That's absolutely incredible.
It's something ridiculous like that.
But, it's going to be another no, let's be honest.
You never know. But yeah, Morton, maybe they're still in trouble, but this isn't a result to be troubled by.
No, I mean, nobody who gets, nobody who finds themselves in the bottom 2 this season is realistically, the season isn't going to be defined by losing 2-0 to St Johnstone when you've got quite a few injuries. Like, that's not the game that you're going to look back and go, oh, that's what's really put us in bother this year. It will be, from a Morton perspective, it will be games like losing to Airdrie, losing to us, things like that.
Because that's 3 defeats in a row now. It's like after that pretty comfortable win against Dunfermline. It's it's weird because Dunfermline have done the opposite since then.
That's true. Yeah, they have. Yeah, the polar opposite. In fact, Brophy scored that night against Dunfermline too, didn't he? He actually scored. He was on the score sheet. I think he'd actually scored 3 goals in like 5 games or something until he was taken out of action. So that's going to be a significant blow for them.
Yeah, Brophy got the opener in that one, but it'd be intriguing to see how if Morton can recover, because just looking at the form table there, they are the worst of the last 5.
Okay.
but we all know what that can mean. And we went on to the final Saturday Championship game, which was Arbroath against Ross County.
Yes.
Arbroath coming off a midweek draw with Ayr, whilst County suffered a 3-0 defeat to Dunfermline. There is not really much football to talk about in this one,
No.
as is probably evident by a 0-0 draw. Caden Kamara would get sent off for County 22 minutes in for a late challenge on Craig Watson. There's no complaints about that one. I think it's pretty clear-cut red card.
Yes.
And then there is also Ross Doherty getting a red card as well for County with, again, a reckless challenge this time from behind. This led to a scrap, to put it lightly. So Doherty got sent off for his challenge, and then there were 2 bookings for each side, although one image that has come from it was an Arbroath player. I can't remember which one it was. It might have been one of the players who got booked. I'm not entirely sure, but it's like grabbing a County player in the face and like fingers going towards the eyes. Not a good look. I think if there was VAR in place, I'd imagine that guy would have got sent off.
So I believe it was Scott Robinson, wasn't it? I'm fairly sure the assailant was Scott Robinson. Yeah, it's a funny one actually. I do wonder if I'm not entirely sure how the rules work around this, because look, a picture can sometimes make something look worse than what it was, but it does look quite clearly to me like he's trying to gouge the guy's eyes out, which obviously you can't do. You can't do that, and I do wonder if there might be some kind of retroactive punishment, suspension. I don't know. I mean, I think if there's better footage, then there certainly will be. And I think it is quite an easy. I mean, I know I saw some people saying I don't know how the ref missed that, but I think it's quite an easy one to miss in the midst of a bit of a scrap like that. So yeah, not nice. I really hope. I mean, if he has genuinely gone out there with the intention of hurting the player, Ross Dockett, then he should receive some punishment, maybe a 2 or 3 game suspension. I don't know, which obviously wouldn't be ideal from an Arbroath perspective. So I guess we'll see in the coming days if the SFA have any kind of like disciplinary tribunal lined up for that. The game itself looked absolutely terrible, genuinely miserable. And again, this is what I was touching on earlier on. I do think Arbroath are in a little bit of a slump right now compared to some of the footballing results they were getting earlier on in this season. I mean, they couldn't beat a 9-man Ross County. Is that in itself is significant? They couldn't break them down and even get a single goal under those circumstances. Now I know the second red card was really, really late, but they had time to take control of that game, grow into it, and take advantage of the situation, and they didn't. And I think if I were an Arbroath fan, my overriding feeling would be that I'm just grateful that they had such a gap on the teams in 4th, 5th, 6th, and so on, because I'm not entirely sure how the remainder of the season is going to go for them. And I also don't think they'll be expecting to make much of a dent in the playoffs when they come around. Sorry, Arbroath fans.
It definitely is the case. I was going to say about, aside from Ryan Dow hitting an effort over like right at the death, really nothing to be said for this game footballing wise. Which, especially for Arbroath, when it's like you're sitting in 3rd and you're facing off against a team that going into the game was bottom, and they're down to 10 men 20 minutes
Granted.
thinking,
Bottom, granted, but over the past kind of month and a half or so, they have been picking up some decent results. They've certainly improved in that, in that regard.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think, Kettlewell won Manager of the Month.
Did, yeah, that was strange. Even Ross County fans were slagging that decision on Twitter, I saw. So, yeah, I think it might have been a case of maybe they're a wee bit fed up giving it to Valakari, so they just they wanted to award it to someone else just for a wee change, a wee trip up to Dingwall for the award. I don't know.
But it's like County have definitely improved recently, but it's like down to like we saw with Airdrie against Morton last week. It's like even if you're not the best, like to have a man advantage for that long and not really do anything with it isn't a good look. And like I was saying, there was 3 draws in a row, and with a resurgent Dunfermline, with their 2 wins now, it's the gap between Arbroath and Dunfermline now is only 7 points. Dunfermline have a game in hand, look to be in a better run of form. I've got a better goal difference. It's not looking as cushy as it once was for Arbroath, to say the least.
No.
In that third spot, County, meanwhile, I mean, it's a decent point. It's a good point for them. Any point is good for them at this point. You know what? It does lift them off the bottom of the table. They are now 3 points behind Morton. So I somewhat dragging themselves, kicking and screaming into trying to stay alive in this division.
And I think they will. You know that. I think County will finish 7th or 8th. If I'm honest with you, I can't see the bottom 2 staying the way it is. I think Airdrie will likely stay there, but I don't think County will. I think they're. Do you know what it is? Right, they're not gonna be spectacular. They're not going to win in particularly exciting fashion. But they'll be difficult for some teams to break down. And I think if they get the lead on you, you might be in trouble because Kettlewell is capable of shithousing his way to 3 points under those circumstances.
That seems to be a plan, really. Just do enough. Just do enough, and it seems to be going their way. I just clicked on the phone table. There for the last 10, Ross County have earned the 3rd most points, 1 more than Arbroath.
Well, then, yeah. So, whereas I think at Airdrie, Morton, probably Ayr are right down the bottom.
Yeah, Airdrie and Morton are at the bottom. Same with Ayr and, of course, Rafe still. But, so that was the Saturday's championship results. But, of course, we do have a couple of Scottish Cup games to go over. Saturday night saw Dunfermline host Aberdeen in what was a rather comfortable win for them. You know, like I said last week about how even against Rafe at Penitentiary, Aberdeen were poor, and you know, it's like I came away from that thinking if we were any sort of positive footballing side, we could have got a win out of that. Dunfermline really went at it, and yeah, there is no complaining from Aberdeen fans about the result. And you know, it's like some of the defending for a couple of their goals was just diabolical. That Aberdeen team was terrible, which, you know, fair play to Dunfermline, took full advantage of it. They're in good form now. You know, winning the last league games, winning that cup game.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I do watch the Premiership, but I think Aberdeen are one of the teams that I've probably seen the least of this season. If I'm honest with you, see a lot of Celtic, Hearts, and Rangers on the TV, and I try to kind of watch a bit of Motherwell as well because I think they're really, really entertaining. And I have to say, I don't. I would assume that's probably not reflective of how Aberdeen play every single week, because if that were the case, they would be bottom of the table with 0 points. But they were much worse than I was anticipating. I didn't watch the whole game. Saw bits and pieces, and then I caught some highlights and stuff as well. But to be fair, I also think Dunfermline deserve so much credit for that. And what I will say as well, and you might not necessarily like this, Callum, but East End Park was absolutely bouncing that night, and I'm sure that, you know, from the players' perspective, really did give them a wee boost. You have to say fair play, and the way the draws worked out for them gives them a very, very, very tasty semi-final against a team that whose guts they absolutely hate.
Yeah, I was going to say, I believe it was a sellout, that game.
Yes, it was, yeah.
And you know, it's like absolutely fair play to them. They've got to Hampden for the cup semi-final. They've got Falkirk, which I think, you know, going into that game, it was a case of, oh, hold on a minute, if Dunfermline when they get face Falkirk, that'll be brilliant. and that's what they've got. I think that'll be really interesting. That'll be a really interesting one.
I think. Do you know who else will probably think that's brilliant though? Falkirk fans, because they'll see it as they'll see it as a phenomenal, because they'll see themselves as favourites, and they rightfully should, because they're having a fantastic season as well. They'll see it as a great opportunity to scud their biggest rivals on the national stage in front of, you would expect, 25,000-30,000 people at Hampden. I mean, and make their way into the Scottish Cup final for the first time since, when was it? What year was it they lost that final to Inverness? I can't remember what year that
2015. It was
2015.
Was it 2015? It was the 2014-15 Scottish Cup
Yeah.
final last time.
I was going to say, actually, for the first time in over 10 years, but actually 10, 11 years isn't that much of a wait for a club the size of Falkirk, realistically, to get to 2 cup finals. Regardless,
I was going to say
they'll
it
fancy
was
it.
like 50 years or something like that. So
Yeah. So, but that is a tasty fix. So I'm looking forward to that.
it's like, for both teams, it is a case of that's probably their best route into the final.
And and I do. Well, maybe Dunfermline.
Or maybe if Dunfermline got St Mirren.
Yeah, if we're looking at it from the possibility of progressing, St Mirren is objectively an easier, in air quotes, tie than Falkirk would be. But obviously the occasion is exciting, and that'll bump up the number of fans from either side who would have likely attended. So it's a big one. It's certainly one to look forward to. I do wonder though whether Dunfermline, and we'll come on to talk about the upcoming fixtures, whether they might have a wee bit of a hangover from that. Obviously, they've been playing really well. They've picked up some good results in the league recently, but whether they'll maybe have a wee bit of a hangover from that, and whether also they might take their eye off the ball a bit in the league now that they've got that to kind of, because they're looking at it, right? Are they going to win the playoffs if they finish fourth? Probably not, because nobody really does that. Are they? Do they have an opportunity to get to the Scottish? Are they going to get relegated again? Probably not, because there's far too many teams below them who aren't capable of pulling together a string of results that would drag them into a real battle. But do they have a real opportunity to get to the Scottish Cup final? Yes, and I would have minor concerns about them taking their eye off the ball a bit if I were a Pars fan. But maybe Neil Lennon isn't the kind of manager that would allow his team to do that. I just obviously they have such a young squad that they might just get a wee bit carried away. But we'll see. The coming weeks will give us an answer to that question.
Yeah, I think the whole when it came to Dunfermline going into the season was a case of fight for the promotion playoffs. Like you say, with the gap to county, it's 9 points for a game in hand. I think they're very much. I think we can consider them safe.
They're as safe as anybody is, really. I think so too. It's just that there's too many teams. There's too many teams below them for that to happen. I don't. It would take a monumental collapse and a monumental uptick in form for so many other sides as well.
I need some ridiculous run of fixtures to happen for
unlikely
Dunfermline to be in any real trouble. So I definitely say they're safe. And with how Ayr have been, who are behind them by 2 points and also have a game in hand, they've been rubbish. So I don't see Ayr troubling them. So yeah, probably fifth at a minimum is now what it's going to be for Dunfermline. And even if they finish fifth, they'll probably be like, you know what, that's fair enough, considering the inconsistency we've seen. The squad age, there's definitely a project going on there that you can see with bringing in these young players. Of course, they have what's his name? Oxborough was in goal for the last couple of weeks. He's away back to Motherwell. He's been recalled, but there was something about him potentially returning. I think it's an emergency recall, so he can go back once Motherwell don't need him.
That's interesting though, because the Dunfermline post on social media and on their website mentioned the possibility of him returning relatively soon. The Motherwell post didn't, but I guess their fans won't necessarily be concerned with that. So maybe that's why they didn't bother mentioning it. Whereas obviously Dunfermline will know that their fans would want to know what the likelihood of that is. So at the very least, they've got Tyrrell back and they're not reliant on Mehmet. I think Tyrrell's a slight level up from Mehmet. And I thought Oxborough was really good for them, by the way, in the games that he played. The game against us, he didn't have a huge amount of, I don't think, maybe one actual save to make, two possibly. But he was very, very commanding of his box. He was a big kind of vocal goalkeeper. And it's not a surprise that he's played so many games for Motherwell and has come down to this level and looks very, very solid.
I was going to say, I think that's 3 clean sheets in a row now, which
Yeah.
If they had Mehmet or whatever in goal, don't think we would have been saying that.
Probably not.
But yeah, and when it does come to the other semi-final, of course, that was St Mirren against Partick Thistle.
Yes.
Unfortunately, Kieran has evidently not recovered from his heartbreak. I mean, I have got confirmation that he is alive. He was just busy, but I don't blame him for staying busy, not wanting to talk about it, because this was a case of they gave it their all, but I don't really. The game-changing moment was that penalty.
Yeah, and it happened quite early on as well. Relatively early on.
Yeah, it was about 25, 30 minutes in, something like that, I think it was.
Yeah.
But it was a weird one because it was quite harsh, I think.
So, I think you're right. I mean, my understanding of the handball rule is if it hits off your foot and then deflects onto your hand, then it can't be given. That's my understanding of the rule, and I'm sure somebody will correct me if I'm wrong. And if that is the case, it did clearly touch the defender's foot before it was then deflected up to his hand, and it shouldn't have been given. It's one of those ones where if that's the case and that is the rule, I have no idea how they looked at it and still gave it. Like, what did they not understand the rules, or is that not the rule? I don't know. I mean, if I were a Thistle fan, though, I would be quite upset about it, and I can understand the level of reaction from them afterwards.
Yeah, it's very confusing as to what is actually the handball rule anymore. Trying to think. I was thinking, it's like when you were saying about hitting off a foot and hitting off a hand. I remember Celtic got a last minute penalty for it away against Kilmarnock very early on in the season. But then, what was it called? The key match incident panel, the KMI panel, whatever it stands for.
Yeah.
Later said that it was the wrong decision. So, trying to think they do all this stuff at the end of the month. So we'll see whether if they come back with a similar ruling of it being not the correct decision. But yeah, I can't remember the second goal. I really should have watched the highlights before this, but I do remember Stanley's effort being very good hit from a corner from the edge of the box for the young lad. But St Mirren just seemed to be a cup team. They're just a cup team.
And Stanley was excellent, by the way, on the night. I mean, I feel as though anytime I watch Thistle play this season, he generally is, and I think they'll be very, very lucky if they can hang on to him any longer than this year, especially if they don't achieve promotion. I think he's going to go on to do bigger and better things than Partick Thistle. He was excellent though. Yeah, really, 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 really exciting player to watch, and he's capable of wee moments of magic. St Mirren, look, there are only three places between the clubs and the in the overall pyramid once you combine
something like that. I think the 9th in the league, 10th in the league.
Yeah, and there's not a significant difference. And I'll be frank with you, I don't particularly care about St Mirren. I would imagine most people tuning into this podcast also don't particularly care about St Mirren. But what I will say is that there is certainly the possibility of a championship team in the playoffs relegating whoever finishes 11th in the Premiership. That was my biggest takeaway from watching that game. Whether that's St Mirren or Dundee or Kilmarnock or less likely, I think Livingston will go straight down. Aberdeen, maybe, I don't know. Well, I mean, based on the result against Dunfermline, who knows? But I think there is scope for 2 championship teams to get promoted this season.
I'd imagine Kieran would be banging on about the aforementioned Thistle away form.
They would have beaten them at home. They would have won.
That's probably what it would have been if it was a home fixture. Just with the way St Mirren have been, I think outside of the cups, they've only won 1 in their last 13. league fixtures. But yeah, it's just unlucky for Thistle. A final game, I should mention though, of course, St Mirren. They are facing off against Celtic in the other semi-final, so of course,
We don't care about
against
that.
Falkirk, St Mirren against Celtic for the
None
cup
of our
semi-finals.
business.
Hopefully, I don't have to talk about the cup final on this podcast. Um, but I will move on to the final game of the podcast, which was last night, Tuesday night's game between Ayr and Queen's Park. United looking to reignite some hope for a playoff spot. Meanwhile, Queen's looking to continue their excellent form. And once again, Enzo, it's Queen's Park, so I'll let you take us away.
Yes. So obviously, it was really interesting because it's not often that you play two teams back to back in the league. So we played Ayr last night, and we've got them again on Saturday. So it was, I almost felt as though last night there was a bit of pressure off us. Maybe there'll be a little bit more pressure on us at home, and maybe the onus is on us to get something in the return fixture. And I was going into last night's game thinking, do you know what? If we can come away with a point, I'll be quite pleased with that. But I did have the fact that Ayr had only won 3 home games all season in the back of my mind. So I thought a draw is certainly achievable. And obviously Ayr had a couple of, they had Oakley and Dowd starting up front last night, a combination that I don't think they've been able to play much this season due to things like injury. And I did have my concerns about that. George Oakley, especially when he was at Morton, had a tremendous record of scoring goals against us. Fortunately, it wasn't to be, and I'll be frank, the reason for that is that he got absolutely no service from Ayr. Now, Ayr were poor. Ayr were very, very poor. But I also think Queen's Park deserve credit. I think we played really, really well last night, especially in the conditions. I mean, the first half in particular was brutal, windy, rainy, just not what you want, but not conducive to a good game of football. And there wasn't. I think the first half was fairly end to end, probably helped by the wind. But then on about the 55th minute, Ayr had a really, really decent opportunity in the kind of in the box. But Ewan Murray managed to clear the ball, and then a few minutes later, we took the lead. So I think that was the 58th minute. Henry Fieldson picks up the ball. I can't tell. I mean, I think it was a shot, and he hits it kind of across the face of the goal. Callum Smith was in the right place at the right time, and he just knocks it in to make sure that it did go in. Because I'm not entirely convinced that Fielson's strike was going to go in, and I think we deserve to take the lead at that point. I really, really do. Now, I am incredibly biased. I will never hide the fact that I'm incredibly biased, but I do think that it was completely fair. And we had a couple of wee half chances here and there. I think in the 75th minute, Todorov went off and Michael Ruth came on. Michael Ruth obviously scored the winner for us against Airdrie on Saturday. But unfortunately, on the 80th minute, Ayr did manage to get one goal back. So we switched to a back three at this point, or a back five, depending on how you want to look at it with the wing backs. And unfortunately, it was a low drive, Ben Dempsey, and I feel as though Ferry's vision was from outside the box, and I think Ferry's vision was potentially blocked by so much traffic in the box in front of him, and it was really disappointing. And I feel as though conceding in the 80th minute or so, such a disappointing way to do it, because it's like it's late enough that you yourself might not have too many opportunities to come back in the game, but there's still enough time that the team that's equalised might be galvanised and might find themselves with other opportunities and potentially even take the lead, which would be really, really frustrating, because I feel as though we've had so many games against Ayr over the years where they've managed comeback wins against us, something that we don't do all too often. But fortunately, that was not to be at all. In the 86th minute, I think it was, Matty Shields makes a fantastic run down the left-hand side where he skins a couple of Ayr players, and kind of not too dissimilar to his goal against Airdrie on Saturday. He cuts it in from the left-hand side. Michael Ruth, once again, in the right place at the right time, buries it, and we hold on for all 3 points at Somerset Park. Really, really pleased to see Michael Ruth now with 2 game-winning goals in the past 4 or 5 days. He absolutely deserves it. I was so excited for him when he came in, and he was really unfortunate with that bad injury that he picked up. But he seems to be adjusting to the level of football at this level so well, considering his season is effectively just started now. And it's another huge win for us to put a little bit more daylight between us and the sides behind us. If you're an optimist, you could also look at it as us closing in on that fourth spot. Listen, I would bite your hand off for eighth right now. You offered me eighth place right now. I think I would. I think I would take it, and maybe that's just the negative mindset I've got watching this team over the years. But if we can carry on our current form, and I suspect that might be unlikely. I think there will be a couple of disappointing results in there between now and the end of the season. But over the last 6 games, we are the best team in the championship. Over the last 10 games, we are the second best team in the championship, only behind St Johnstone with 2 fewer points than them. So you have to say, I think we're looking all right. I wouldn't put any money on it, but I don't. I'm gonna stick my neck on the line here and say we won't get relegated. That's how I'm feeling, and I am happy about that. This team is an absolute joy to watch right now, and you can tell. And Callum Smith said it in his post game interview as well. The mood in the squad and the group of players is just so high, and that can be half the battle. Sometimes it really can. Where you've got a manager that you want to play for, you've got a group of guys that are close knit that want to play for each other. Um, we've added so much experience in January that's made a brilliant difference. Being able to bring Michael Ruth, Ricky Lamy, and I can't recall who else, but being able to bring guys like that off the bench compared to 3 months ago when we were bringing 18-year-old boys without any real experience off the bench is really significant. So yes, I'm quite excited. From an Air perspective, I really don't know where they go from here either. Kind of similar to what I was saying to Airdrie. Obviously, it's not quite as extreme an example, but obviously Ayr had much loftier expectations than Airdrie, and I feel very confident in saying, you know what, I think, because as I say, we play them again on Saturday. If we were to beat them again on Saturday, I wouldn't be shocked if it were Scott Brown's last game. I certainly think one way or another he will be out by the end of this season, if not sooner.
I was going to say about with Ayr, they've just looked directionless for ages. They've just been sort of there. Like I was saying about the form table earlier, they're actually 8th for the last 10 and 8th for the last 5 as well. It is just, there's nothing to them.
No.
There's no words that can describe them, really, apart from just there. And especially when we were all thinking, it's like considering how they were last season, and you look at the transfer business they've done. Scott Brown was well backed. They definitely, on paper, strengthened that squad, and they're just nowhere. And like you say, a win against them next week, it's like I don't see Scott Brown being here next season at all.
I don't see him being here next season, regardless. But I think people forget that right up until maybe the final third of the season, Ayr were in a title hunt last season, and the expectation this season would have been for the same again. I think the bare minimum that the Ayr board would have expected is the playoffs, and then to have a real go in the playoffs as well. I think they wanted to win the league, and I think that some people saw them as a decent sort of outside bet to do that as well. But I watched Scott Brown's interview last night, and it would have really annoyed me if I were an Ayr fan, because he talks about other than the 2 boxes, we did all the right things. But a team doesn't want to hear that. Like, supporters don't want to hear that when you've just lost 2-1 at home. They don't want to hear that when you're not winning many games of football and you're objectively underachieving over the course of a full season. That's not what people don't care about, the little things that you've done right. People want to hear about what you're going to do to fix the glaring issues, which were probably quite poor defending from the 2 Queen's Park goals. Certainly could have been better, and just not creating anything, no service at all to your 2 objectively very decent strikers for this level of football.
Yeah, it's just utterly bizarre. It's like if Ayr were the way they were, but in Arbroath's position, there'd probably still be complaints, but not to the extent. But they've just been so poor. It's just, like you say, it's like don't see Scott Brown being here next season under any circumstance. Especially, I'm not sure if it's a case of his contract's up at the end of the season. They're not in any real danger of being relegated for now. But if it is a case of his contract's up at the end of the season, then it's just a case of just leave it and let him go rather than spend however much and then try and get a manager in during the latter part of the season when you can just see it out, get to the summer. You can work on looking at replacements now, and then once his contract's expired, you can just bring someone in that you've already got a sort of unwritten verbal agreement. That's it. That's what I was looking for. But
I'm not sure I would trust the Ayr board to pick the right guy, to be honest with you. But I guess time will tell how that scenario pans out.
And then, of course, Queen's Park, it's like up to 6. Like you said, you've got Ayr again next week. Considering the gap, and as you were saying, you think you're all right. At what point, looking at your future fixtures, Ayr, Morton, St Johnstone away, at what point will you say you guys are safe? Considering the form,
well, we've got
around.
Our next 2 games are Ayr and Arbroath. Ayr, Arbroath, and then St Johnstone the following week. I think for anyone, so I think 40 points will absolutely keep anyone safe in this division this season. And I think, honestly, 37-38 might even do it as well. I don't know. What I do know, though, is, as I say, like there seems to be a real feel-good factor around the players in the squad right now. And I think Crichton will rightfully have one eye looking over his shoulder. I think they'll be looking to see. I think their goal will just be to pick up as many points as you can and see what happens. And you never know, because as insane as it is, given that we were bottom of the league a month ago, we really aren't that far off challenging for a promotion playoff spot as well.
You've done all this since Josh Fowler, who had like half of your team's goals left right at the end of January.
Yeah, we. So I think I saw. I can't recall the exact numbers. Just bear with me. I do have it noted here. But you're right. We've won more games now since Fowler left than we did with him in the squad. So we had won. So in the first 20 games of the season, we'd picked up 18 points. And in the past 8 games, we've picked up 16 points. So in 8 games, we've only picked up 2 fewer points than we did in 20 games. And I've talked about this before, but Sean Crichton for me deserves so much credit. I think he's a fantastic young manager who has a real eye for the right kind of recruitment, because his recruitment has been spot on. He got exactly what we needed in January. The fact that he was able to reorganise, reassess the squad, and shift some things around to get the best out of the players that he's got once you're losing the guy who was scoring all the goals. He just deserves so much credit. And I'm slightly nervous about the fact that it might not be too long before some slightly bigger clubs up the Scottish football food chain might have half an eye on him. We'll see.
United.
I mean, yeah, it's possible, because we don't know where we're going to be as a club next season. So who knows?
So that is all of the fixtures covered. So we'll just quickly move on to the table, which of course has St Johnstone top on 57. Thistle, who didn't play, they're on 49 with their game in hand. Arbroath sit third on 43, whilst Dunfermline are in fourth on 36 with a game in hand. Ayr are fifth on 34 with a game in hand, tied with Queen's Park on 34, who've played 28 games. They've got a -9 goal difference. That's what's keeping them behind. Then down to 7th, Rafe with a game in hand on 30, tied with Morton, who have played a game more and have a -10 goal difference. So it could be worse. And then, of course, we have Ross County in 9th on 27 points and Airdrie 10th with 26. We move on to The weekend's fixtures. Friday night, Under the Lights makes a return with Greenock Morton against Partick Thistle. Any thoughts on this one?
If Thistle are going to break this weird away form curse that they've got, this feels like a really good opportunity for it. If they don't win this game, then I don't know when that's ever going to change. To be honest with you, I think right now a Morton team that doesn't have a striker, that has a few injuries, suspensions, whatever else. If they don't win that, then I'm not entirely convinced that they ever will. And I think that'll be quite a significant one for in the title race if they drop points here. But I actually think this will win. I'm kind of looking forward to watching this game on Friday night.
Yeah, it does feel that way. If like you say, it's like Thistle. If they're not going to win an away game, then like this is like the best chance. If they don't, then that's it. And if they don't win, that's a title done.
I think so.
Even before they've got their game in hand and the game against St Johnstone, I think that would be it. I think that would be it for them because we'll go on to the rest of the fixtures, of course. But it's like with Morton again. No, it's like with them being down where they are. It's don't want to say a free hit, but they've lost their last three. They're facing second in the league. They need to get something from this.
I mean, well, yeah. The answer to that is yes. Given the goal difference situation, it's unlikely that they could drop into the bottom two. Because County and Airdrie both have Airdrie can't catch them mathematically. Obviously, County have a worse goal difference than them, so they're probably safe.
Worse by 7. So
that's it. And let's say County, and I guess we'll talk about it in a second as well. I don't think County will beat St Johnstone, but if they manage to, and then you're on the same points as Morton, that is when if I'm a Morton fan, I start panicking. But that's a very hypothetical scenario.
And then, of course, moving on to the Saturday fixtures. Of course, it is the big one. Reef at home to Dunfermline. No, away to Dunfermline. Sorry, I've written it backwards. But it's like with that one, it's very much a case of please God. I have.
Well, similar to Morton, obviously, you guys are in the same scenario where if you lose this and the teams at the bottom get results, then that's when surely the panic sets in from a Wraith perspective.
I mean, I'm already in the panic stations, but
okay,
it's like with it being Dunfermline, I am very concerned, especially with the form that they've been on. But then, of course, as mentioned, Oxford, he got recalled by Motherwell, so Dunfermline will be down to Mehmet or something, which they're not him and that other child they had in goal. I can't remember his name. Terrell, I think it was. There was Terrell, and then there was someone else. And it's like those three haven't been great. But the thing is, this is Wraith away from home we're talking about here. We've scored twice in our last 11 away games. I don't think you need to be particularly. As long as you are somewhat competent, you're probably going to keep a clean sheet. And I don't trust us going into this one at all.
And what's the? I mean, what is the issue?
I very rarely like that for derbies.
Is there a bit of criticism being directed at Doug Imrie, or is he still got the full fan base's backing?
Not really. There's not really any criticism going towards Dougie because it is a case of this squad has remained pretty much the same for like 3 years, and we've gone through like Murray, Collins, Robson, and now Emery, and we've been seeing the same sort of things. And trying to think, we're without Jack Hamilton definitely. So I think Ennis Cameron will be starting, and he's not scored. I think no, I don't think he's scored, but he has been. I've been impressed by him. I think he's been good when he has played. I think because we've had this week off, I like to think it's given just a break from hell that has been.
Do you think it'll help? You think it's beneficial? Because it can sometimes go one way or another, but sometimes I just kind of the opportunity to catch your breath is
Aye,
exactly what
that's what
you need.
I'm hoping. And like you say about the Vermin with their cup win and the hangover and all that sort of stuff, having an eye on the
Yeah.
upcoming Falkirk game, maybe there is that. But and it's a derby. It's a derby. Anything can happen in these fixtures. It's like last time around, Dunfermline won at Starks for the first time in since like 2016, 2015, about a decade. And then a couple of seasons ago, when Murray was in charge, we'd won at Eastern Park for the first time since like 2012 or something daft like that. But
and like I was saying earlier on, there is always the possibility of a kind of post cup hangover from Dunfermline as well. That for as much as Wraith have been poor recently and Dunfermline are on a really good run of form, I don't think I'd be shocked if Wraith did manage to get a I think I'd be surprised if they won, but I wouldn't be too shocked if this was like 0-0 or potentially even Wraith getting a goal, which I know sounds really shocking, but maybe 1-1-all.
the shock will be us scoring a goal away from home. But I'm fully prepared for this to be a 0-0. That's just how
Would
it
you
is
take that?
away games, and I will take that.
Fair enough. It's understandable.
Like if
at least steadies the ship
not
somewhat,
going to
doesn't
beat
it?
Dunfermline, I would at least not want to lose.
That's fair enough.
And at this point, it's like I'm more than happy to take the point.
Yeah, that's fair.
But moving on, we do have St Johnstone at home to Ross County.
Yep.
Two of the more informed sides. So it'll be interesting. It's weird for St Johnstone because despite them being in this run of form, they haven't looked particularly impressive in it. But then same can be said of Ross County.
And these games have been terrible all season. There's only been one.
They've been absolutely
games between
terrible.
them.
And I think like this is the fourth and final one of that fixture, I think.
Yeah.
And two of them have been 0-0. And the only goal was like a last minute winner or something like that from I can't even mind, but it was like right at the beginning of the season.
I think it was like Piezu.
I think it
who's now a county player. So maybe
he's now at Ross County. But it'll be intriguing just to see how, if anything, can actually happen in this fixture for once.
Yeah.
But
not been the best.
Not getting hopes up for it. There is, of course, Queen's Park at home to Ayr United. Well, we've just mentioned it. It happened on the Tuesday. We've sort of talked about it, but yeah, I'm going to guess you're looking hopeful for this one.
Yeah, I think we'll get a result. I wouldn't be too shocked if it ended up a draw. But if we can win this, then I genuinely think that we are really in the position to mount a challenge for the top four. But I could see a draw.
It's just a defining one for both teams. Really, like an defeat is just the end of their season.
Yeah.
And then the final one is, of course, Airdrie at home against Arbroath. We mentioned earlier about Airdrie having a weirdly good record against Arbroath. I can actually hold on. Can I see the? Hold on. Let me see. Can I bring up a head-to-head?
I think I've got it here actually.
Let's see. Where is it? Head-to-head matches. We have Airdrie beating Arbroath on penalties. Airdrie beating Arbroath on penalties. Draw, Airdrie win, Arbroath win. And that's all this season. They've got plenty of experience fighting against each other. That's with the way it's going, probably a draw.
I think a draw is likely as well, but I don't think a draw is good enough for Airdrie at this point. They need to win this game. They need to win. It's as simple as that. I wouldn't bank on it happening, but you never know. Maybe Arbroath will get 2 players sent off as well.
We'll of course cover those results next week. my appearance will be depending on the result. I say this every time, but I just turn up. I am stuck here. So, yeah, we will cover those results next week. Hopefully, Kieran will be back. He'll have recovered.
He might be. We'll see. Who knows where he is?
So that's it for this week. We'll be back. Goodbye for now.
Yes.